Calls it a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires. Swinging a drive. Deep left field. It's his way back. Walker Buehler.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today for a little off-day DodgerHeads by Anthony Witrado. Anthony, 24 hours since the disappointment of Game 2. Have our emotions a 5-game series with the New York Mets?
You know what? Before I start, I want to give a little quick shout out to my buddy Joe Swisher. He's a Northern California resident. He's not quite a teenager yet, and he's loving the game of baseball. He grew up with his parents both being Giants fans. So, young Joe, we are happy to have you with us live tonight.
Love it.
His father gave a speech at my wedding. Like we're super tight, and I'm glad Joe is on our side. So thank you for joining us.
Shout out to Joe.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I haven't quite swept away like the disappointment yet of Game 2.
Yeah.
Because like I said yesterday, I think like it was a situation where they really could have put a stranglehold on this thing.
Yeah.
You know, a 2-0 lead, even though the next 3 games are in New York, really feels, especially against a team like this, where they have, I think, the better pitching lined up going forward now, really makes it feel daunting and next to impossible to come back against this team if they win those first 2 games. And so I said it yesterday and I'll say it again now, it was a completely wasted opportunity. I think the way that game ended up going. But, you know, we're here now, and I do like the matchup tomorrow with Buehler and Severino. So I'm feeling confident, just not entirely happy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, you know, there was so much debate about how things played out specifically that I think I reflected back from yesterday, and it was like, I think there was just a general, as you summed it up perfectly, disappointment. It was an opportunity missed. I don't think anybody believes that like that was somehow a death blow one way or another, or even devastating to the Dodgers. But it felt like, man, if they could have gone up 2-0, get 2 wins in less than 24 hours, right, what an impact that would have had on things moving forward. To your point, now the Dodgers would have, you know, only needed to win 2 out of 5 basically to put this series away. And instead, now it's a 5-game series against a Mets team that has home field advantage. 3 of the next 5 are in New York and not in Los Angeles. And so it's not an insurmountable series situation by any stretch of the imagination, but I think you summed it up perfectly. It was a missed opportunity. So tonight, the goal is to look ahead. Game 3, tons of time for questions at the end. Thank you to everybody, as always, joining us live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. I see Noah saying he usually catches these after the fact and not live. So shout out to you, Noah. Thanks for being with us. And thanks to all the people, Tim, Amanda, Suze, Nomo, FOMO, Maddie Man, Laura, of course, folks at EB that we see in here regularly. Thank you. We greatly appreciate you guys spending a Tuesday night here with Anthony and myself. You know what? I was going to start with the Game 4 preview, Anthony, but I got to start with what I think is the best news of the entire day. It was an off day.
Clayton Kershaw, thought about you when I heard this. I thought about you immediately.
He's coming back. We knew that. Announced today, clarified today. Yes, it would be as a Dodger. He was asked if he was going to test free agency one day after saying, hey, I'm planning on coming back next year. And he clarified today, no, it will be a Dodger. So I know there are no playoff implications here, but let's cleanse the palate a little bit, Anthony, with some good news. The GOAT is coming back as a Dodger in 2025.
And this is good news. Like I know he's become a polarizing player on this roster and in our chats and just kind of everywhere around, you know, wherever there are Dodger fans, he's become sort of a little bit of a lightning rod. But he's still a valuable arm.
Yeah.
I mean,
they need him.
Understanding the availability has been an issue. When he has pitched, he's been a really, really good pitcher. He hasn't been an ace. He's not that guy anymore. He's not a number 1 starter anymore, but he's a guy with like an ERA right around 3. I think the year before it was sub 3, maybe right around there.
It was 4.5 this year.
Yeah.
That includes 2 starts at the very end of the season where he's clearly trying to pitch through it. So it was a 2.63 ERA for Clayton Kershaw on the season going into those last 2 starts where clearly the decision was made to shut it down.
Yeah. So, I think he's still valuable. And to get him to come back and he's going to pick up that option. And, there are some huge question marks going into next season as of tonight with that rotation.
Yeah.
It looks like Stone's done.
Yeah. Well, Stone is done.
Yeah. You're not exactly sure what's going to happen with Glass now.
I know people keep penciling. Matt was tweeting out yesterday. Here's 3 of the 5 on the Dodgers. I'd say Glasnow's got an elbow injury, and we're just penciling him in for opening day.
Right.
Not me, sir.
Yeah, not me either. Not me either. I'm waiting for that shoe to drop in the wintertime at some point. But and there's other guys. Who knows what Dustin May is going to look like? He hasn't pitched in 2 years. And all of this stuff. Who knows if they'll have Buehler back, and then who do they go out and get? And there's a whole ton of questions. Totally. Everybody told us yesterday that they didn't trust Landon Knack, and we can't trust Bobby Miller. So say all that to say, I think he can be a valuable piece to this rotation next year, as long as he can stay healthy or even relatively healthy. I think that's a big plus. So. It was good news, not just because I don't ever want to see that guy in a different uniform, but because they actually kind of need him to come back.
Yeah. 32 strikeouts away from 3,000, a huge milestone for him.
And that'll be huge too. He needs to do that in a Dodger uniform.
And I'll say one more thing on Kershaw. He's going to have a healthy offseason, presumably. Like, he's going to get this toe thing theoretically figured out. Last year it was, when are we going to see him? If we're going to see him. There was a lot of talk if he was going to come back at all. So if you want to make big judgments about Clayton Kershaw and the performance that you saw from him this year, keep in mind that myself included and multiple people on this show were saying, hey, I don't even know if we're going to see him. Shoulder injury, guy of that age. You don't usually come back from shoulder surgery. I mean, I'll put it this way. Gavin Stone had a shoulder surgery. We don't know if it's the same or what's different. He's already been ruled out for next season, and he had the shoulder surgery a month before Kershaw did in the timeline. Kershaw didn't have his until well after the season had ended. And so, I just think he's going to be competent at the very least. Nobody here is saying, oh my gosh, he's going to go out and win the Cy Young in 2025. But to your point, he's 36. He's not 46. And the Dodgers need some arms. So if he can get that toe thing dialed in, get himself a normal, restful offseason, I think there's going to be some value in having Clayton Kershaw back with the Dodgers.
I agree.
All right, let's shift from a guy that we're talking about in the future, as in months and months away, to a guy that's going to be the center of attention tomorrow, Anthony, and it's Walker Buehler. I went back and I wanted to, I didn't get to watch Game 3. If you missed this, I was away camping. I was just thankful that SiriusXM had service in the national park and that I was able to listen to the game. But as I was listening, I was frustrated on Walker Buehler's behalf. So I went back to this game. 5 innings, 7 hits, 6 earned runs.
You watched it?
Let me just say this. I think it's about as good of a 5 innings, 7 hits, 6 earned run performance as you could ever possibly have.
I said that night, I think I was on with Scott that night, and I said, you'll never see a better performance in whatever that line was that night. I said, that's the best performance with that line you're ever going to see.
Yeah. I went back and looked at kind of some of the savant numbers as far as expected batting average, that kind of thing. In the second inning alone, he gave up base runners on balls that had the following expected batting average: 160, 070, 190, and 120. He gave up 4 balls, base runners, fielder's choices or base runners on those 4. Even the better expected batting averages, 35% of the time it's a hit, went for a hit. 32% of the time goes for a hit. Of course, he gives up the Tatis home run. Yep. He gave up 5 straight ground balls to start the inning. All 5 of them reached base. 2 on what should have been errors and weren't classified as errors because they went down as fielder's choices.
If they turn 2 of those ground balls into outs, they win the game.
Yeah, he got 5 outs in the inning. Unfortunately, Tatis's home run was after 4 of them, but only 2 of them counted. Here's the issue for Walker Buehler, and it's how I want to set up the stage for the question of the expectations on Buehler in Game 3. He couldn't put anybody away. He had just 8 swings and misses on 39 pitches. I went back, Anthony. I'm just curious, in 5 innings, do you want to guess how many 2-strike counts Walker Buehler got guys to and then was unable to put them away with a strikeout. 5 innings.
How many guys?
How many at-bats did he get 2 strikes before not being able to strike them out?
I'll say 9.
10 different times. In the second inning alone, he got 6 different dudes to 2 strikes and couldn't put any of them away. 4 more in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th inning. So 10 times he gets to 2 strikes. Anthony, I think my expectations are entirely based on, can he do better than that? Like I said, he had 8 swings and misses on 39 swings. That's not going to cut it. Is there hope in your mind that number is going to be better against the Mets?
There's hope. Yes, there is hope that number can improve. That team specializes in not striking out. That's part of their entire strategy, is to just get bat to ball.
Yeah.
The Mets, not so much. And also, in some of those 2 strike counts, he gave up weak contact that did not result in outs. And so, a combination of being just a little better there. I don't think he has to be like, he doesn't have to turn into like the strikeout king overnight. He just has to be better. And then you turn some of that weak contact into outs, and that's it. And I think he's totally fine. Like, he pitched well enough. I think pitch count, like had that inning not snowballed the way it did, his pitch count probably would have, I don't know if they would have let him, but he would have been entirely efficient and gotten himself through 6 innings. That could have happened without that inning blowing up. And so I am confident. I am confident in this matchup, and I'm confident that he can get a little better in that area, because he has always been a swing and miss guy before this season. I know the stuff and the numbers behind the back door aren't as good as they have been. But I think he can. This is not as good a lineup as San Diego, and it's not as good a lineup in terms of strikeout rate. And so, yes, I do think that there is a lot of hope there, and he's looked good now. Like, maybe like 3 out of 4 starts, he's looked really good. I thought, and even when the results haven't exactly been there, he's inspiring some confidence now, and he looks like he's turning into a pretty good starting pitcher and a pretty good starting option now, when I think you look back at maybe a month ago and you were like, who's going to take the ball? And Walker Buehler was not a guy that you would have put in his name in the hat.
Going back to strikeouts really quick, the Padres had the best strikeout rate of any team in baseball. They struck out the least, only 17.6% of the time. The Mets were 15th, dead in the middle, but at 22.4%. I mean, that's 5% more. You go from facing the best team to just a middle of the road team when it comes to strikeouts. If you want some context there, the Mets struck out more times than the Dodgers did. So if you felt like the Dodgers had some strikeout issues, the Mets struck out more. So if you're Walker Buehler, Anthony, you're going into this game thinking 2 things. Okay, if I can convert 3 of those 2 strike counts into strikeouts, only 3. If I can just get 3 of them, that dramatically shifts the calculus of this game. I mentioned 6 of those were in that second inning alone.
Yeah.
And not only that, if I continue to get ground balls with expected batting averages below 20%, all 5 of them aren't going to go for hits 5 consecutive times in a row. And so put those 2 things together, and this outing looks different. Because to your point, not only does he not give up 6 earned runs, maybe that number is 2, maybe it's 3, but then he probably also gets into the 6th inning, and that line ends up 6 innings, 3 earned, or 6 innings, 2 earned, something similar with 3 strikeouts. So I think facing a team more likely to strike out, better batted ball luck, add both of those things to the pot of a guy that got incredibly unlucky with some errors and defense behind him. And that's the reason for me, Anthony, I'm actually feeling not confident in the way that I would be if Yamamoto was starting this game, but there's a massive gap between how I felt even before yesterday about Walker Buehler compared to, say, Landon Knack or somebody of that like.
Yeah, I agree. I think that results matter, and it's not June where you can go, he's starting to figure it out. We have time. Like, he needs to prevent runs now, starting tomorrow. And I think that he's got the stuff to be able to do that, and that's what matters. I don't think it's necessarily we're playing the what if game. We're playing the, looking back, how did this actually play out for him specifically, not for the team? And it was actually pretty good for him. And I think if we can see more of the same for that with a little better swing and miss stuff, I am completely confident he can give them 6 innings of 1, 2-run kind of ball.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, the other piece here that's going to be significant is that length that you mentioned. I'm sure there are people listening saying, well, why would you send Walker Buehler back out there for the 6th if you can get through 5 innings of 1 or 2-run ball? Just get to the bullpen. Keep in mind, 3 consecutive games on the next 3 days. And so Walker Buehler is going to be the first domino to fall, that as many outs as he can get you, not at the point where you're risking something, but if Walker Buehler can get you even an out or 2 in the 6th inning, and the stress that would take off of the bullpen, who, again, not the Dodgers' top guys are not going to pitch. I should say, highly unlikely they pitch 3 consecutive days. The Dodgers have been hesitant to throw guys 3 times in 4 days. That's all out the window in the postseason. But most teams are not going to be comfortable sending a guy like Blake Trinan or a guy like Evan Phillips or a guy like Michael Kopech out 3 times in a row. So if one of these guys, Buehler, Yamamoto, and then Flaherty, presumably in game 5, can get you into the 6th inning even, that's going to allow the Dodgers to stagger some things with their bullpen. I'm with you. I think if the over-under was set at 2.5 earned runs for Walker Buehler tomorrow, I think that's like the right number right there. Like, I think you could give me 50-50 odds on over or under, and I think it would be a really difficult decision. I tend to think he's going to be good just because I don't think the Mets are as scary as the Padres offensively. It's not a diss on the Mets. I think the Padres are, outside of the Dodgers, maybe the scariest offense left besides probably the Yankees. And so add in that a little more strikeout, a little more batted ball luck. And I feel pretty good about Walker Buehler tomorrow. Now, these words, somebody might clip this and I might look like an idiot tomorrow, but I felt good about Walker Buehler going into the NLDS. And as weird as it sounds, I kind of felt vindicated even after the results of that game, feeling like I think that was the Buehler that I thought I was going to get. We just didn't have anything go our way.
Absolutely. And in the first inning and from the third and after the second inning, like watching him pitch, he had some funk to him, right? Like he pitches with a little swagger when he's been right. He's got that little hop in his step and he's bouncing off the mound and he's doing that kind of stuff. He had that. And I can't remember really watching him at any point this season where that was prominent, and it was prominent in that game, even after that disastrous inning that he had.
Well, and we had David Vassay on this show and kind of talked about, why is this team different? And he said that the moment that the last series turned was not game 4, but it was actually game 3 when Walker Buehler went into the dugout and started breaking things and chucking things, as basically he thought the moment that fired guys up because of how his emotion was and how his confidence was and how pissed off he was. And so I think that bodes well that we've got pissed off Walker Buehler going into this one. Big game Walker Buehler. He's not going to be afraid of New York. He said he's not afraid of the cold. He's not afraid of the moment. Like, personality-wise, this is the guy you want, and I think the stuff, the approach seems to be peaking at the right time.
Yeah. No Mo FOMO, he's got that funk to him, man. Like there's some attitude there when he's going right, and that's what he had, And look, maybe David Vassay is right. I always used to make fun of David for just saying off the wall kind of stuff. But after he went ballistic in the dugout, Buehler, the Dodgers they didn't lose to the Padres from that inning going forward. Like, they won every set there. And so, maybe there's something to that. But total confidence in the guy.
There was a great moment. There was a great moment. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think he's feeling good. And I think that he understands that inning wasn't necessarily on him. And I think he still took confidence away from that start because of the way it ended, the way it ended just after that inning.
There was a great, and when I say great, a terrible moment at his press conference today that got sent to me in a couple different group chats. It was a New York reporter that asked Walker Buehler this question. And basically he was comparing Walker Buehler to Luis Severino and saying something. I think the nicest way I could put what he was trying to say was like, hey, this is a guy who was good and then had Tommy John surgery and has kind of bounced back. Have you looked at the career arc? But the way that it came across was like, hey, when you look at Luis Severino, who's another guy who used to be good and then had Tommy John surgery and has kind of sucked for the last couple of years, like, do you see any similarities? Was basically the question that was asked to Walker Buehler. And you could tell how pissed he was. It was just like a one-word no, moving along. But the guy was basically like, hey, since you and he both have sucked for 2 straight years, I'm curious if you see. And it's like, man, amazing content there. So shout out to the New York guy for asking that stupid question. And maybe we get a little more extra juice on Walker Buehler this time around. Couple super chats here. Richard with the $10 super chat. Richard, we appreciate you. Good to have you in here tonight. Thank you as always. He said the Dodgers are married to analytics. They map out every game, no matter how well a pitcher is doing. They stick with the script, look no further than 2022. Let the human determine the outcome. I would argue, Richard, I would push back a little and say I think there's way more human element to this than most people give the Dodgers credit for. It's always the human. We hate the human element when it's Dave Roberts going with his gut on a bullpen decision. But, even with Flaherty, even with Honeywell, like those were all decisions where Dave is watching what's happening. Like if you think the Dodgers had Honeywell mapped out for 3 innings yesterday, like I got a boat to sell you somewhere, like I think there are analytics involved. I think there are things you have to map out when it comes to a bullpen game and how you're going to get 27 outs. But I think sometimes we overcredit and overblame analytics, Anthony, for either successes or failures, depending on which side of the narrative we want to be on.
Yeah, and I understand where Richard's coming from, because the Dodgers have put themselves into a position where they have that kind of reputation,
For sure.
and it's earned. It's earned both on the good and maybe a little bit on the bad, but it's mostly good. It's like 95% good.
Yeah.
But I think also what fans sometimes don't understand is how much Dave Roberts and let's a disclaimer here before I say what I'm about to say. The front office isn't calling into the dugout telling Dave Roberts what to do.
Not
every in-game decision you see is a Dave Roberts and his coaching staff.
Well, and I would push back a little because I think there's a lot of these scenarios have been talked about prior to, like, hey, if we can get a lead going into the 7th, we like this guy here and that guy here. And those are conversations with Andrew Friedman.
Okay. And that's a great segue into what I'm about to say, because I'm going to peel away at that a little bit by saying, I think we don't realize until the bad happens, how much Dave actually manages on vibes.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation before, but like, let's say this. If he managed that bullpen magnificently at times in the San Diego series.
Yeah.
He was fantastic with it in games 4 and 5. And I think and in some of that, a lot of that was feels. Like they may have had a general mapping out of like, here's where if this happens.
There was never an analytic that said Clayton Kershaw should be coming into the game as a relief pitcher or as a closer. I can assure you of that.
Right. But like how he deployed Evan Phillips, how he used Trinan, how he used the lefties in those 2 games, right? Like a lot of that stuff was, sure, if you get this part of the lineup, this might be a good opportunity or this might be a good time, but he was leaving guys in for extra outs or taking guys out a little earlier or, things like that. Hey, can you steal me an out here? All of that is feel. And had one of those guys or 2 of those guys hiccuped and they lose, we would have smoked him for not knowing how to manage the bullpen. And we're not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not going there with it. I'm just saying, I think we don't understand how much he manages that, at least the bullpen, or at least the end of a pitcher's rope, a starting pitcher's rope, and then the bullpen on feel.
Yeah.
And there are analytics and numbers and all of that stuff built into some of those feels. I understand that, but so it's the same way for 29 other managers too. It's not just him.
Yeah, I would honestly argue that my biggest beef with Dave Roberts are the moments when he goes away from the analytics. Like, ironically enough, like I actually think analytics are the least of the problems when it comes to Dave Roberts. I have more of an issue when it comes to, as you would put it, the vibes decisions that Dave Roberts is making. I saw somebody, I liked this guy in that spot. Like, how often do we hear that about a decision that we all hated, both in real time and in hindsight? It feels like there are a lot of vibes. So we'll see. I think, Richard, it's a fair point because of the reputation the Dodgers have. As Anthony said, Dodgers are married to analytics. I don't think that's entirely unfair. It might be a slight exaggeration, but I think they are heavily influenced by analytics. I think when it comes to a bullpen game, yes, that's mapped out. They've got a plan for how they're going to get to 27 outs, and there's plan B and C and D. But you can't just get to 27 outs and say, well, throw this guy in and we'll see what happens later. But I think it's really hard to tell the difference between the moments when it's vibes and when it's analytics, because as you said, those are gut reactions. You can plan for 10 different scenarios, but what if scenario 14 pops up? And as we saw yesterday, Daniel Hudson's not available, and then Landon Knack gets blown up. And now what? Like, that wasn't on the bingo card necessarily. And so how do we play that out? So there is a human determining the outcome. That guy's Dave Roberts. Whether or not he's making decisions based on analytics or vibes, to be determined. Another super chat here from Carlos. He said, Will Smith dominated at Citi Field this season. Dave Roberts was asked, we're going to get to some news and notes, but I'll share this one. Dave Roberts is not thinking about switching up the lineup despite Ohtani and Will Smith both struggling as mightily as they have. I joked about Will Smith's hard hit rate, that he had the hardest hit ball of any Dodger the other day, that he had he was one of 4 guys who had a ball over 95 miles an hour off his bat. He had 2 of them. Do you have any confidence that where this guy is at right now, that he has even a big hit in him, Anthony?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, people weren't feeling great about him before the home run in San Diego. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's fine. And we sort of talked about this yesterday. Like, the alternative is Austin Barnes. And over the course of the next 5 games, if it goes that long, I'm more confident that Will Smith is going to give you something of significant value at the plate than I am with Austin Barnes.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I know my reputation as a Will Smith defender. I would just say to people, the number of times that I have held stock on a guy longer than just about everybody else, tell me how many of those have come back in my favor at some point this season. I held stock on Gavin Lux. That one worked out. I held stock on playoff Mookie Betts. That started to work itself out with a couple big home runs against the Padres. Heck, I even held some stock on Walker Buehler, saying he wasn't cooked. That seems to be coming back around to some degree. So I'm going to be wrong on some of these. Okay. I held stock on a lot of guys that went sideways. Evan Phillips, another guy I held stock on. The Dodgers bullpen in general, I held stock on. Sometimes it doesn't come back around, but I think I have a pretty good track record on saying, I know this guy stinks. There you go. Grove still sucks. Okay. Michael Grove, maybe a guy that it went sideways on me and hasn't come back around. That's a fair point, TQT. And I'm still holding on to that stock, though, just so you know. I mean, we're so far at the bottom, it's not even worth selling. We're just holding on. We're not buying. We're in a hold position on our Grove stock. But look, take away the name. I will bet on loud contact. And Will Smith has been making loud contact. So this isn't like he's no loud contact, tons of swing and miss, like just weak hit ground balls everywhere. That's the type of profile I would bet on. It happens to be Will Smith right now. NS says, that begs the question, Jeff, who haven't you held stock on?
It's a great question.
That's a great question. Let me get back to you on that one. Okay. I'm trying to think who Dino Ebel. I'm not holding my Dino Ebel stock. I had a testy exchange with some folks in my text message thread after he held Mookie. What was that, game 1? Yeah, it must have been game 1, right?
Yeah,
yes. Had to be. Yeah, I had some. No Dino Ebel stock is being held. Yeah, that's fine. There's somebody will come to me. I'm trying to think. Anyways,
and look, this isn't to say that Will Smith. We're not saying Will Smith has been
Barnes.
Good.
There you go. No stock on Austin Barnes. There's a good one.
He hasn't been good. Like, we get that. All I'm saying is, if you give me the option between those 2 guys over the course of 5 games, I'm more willing to bet on Will Smith having an impact offensively than Austin Barnes.
Yeah, and I will speak. I am totally fair on Will Smith's been terrible. Like, I'm not afraid to say that out loud.
Yeah, he's been bad.
I get defensive when people tell me Barnes, because Barnes at his best is Will Smith at his worst, and
with no power, and with no power,
and with no power. As Matty Man says, we're gonna live and die with Smith. Get over it. Probably a fair point. I see some people talking Luis Severino, so let's talk a little bit about the Mets starting pitcher. 3.91 ERA on the season. Anthony, 11-7 was the record. 161 strikeouts and 182 innings, a walks and hits per inning pitched of 1.24, which 3.91 ERA, 1.24 whip. Those are numbers I'm feeling decent about at this time of year to be facing a guy in game 3 with an ERA of almost 4 and a whip of almost 1.25.
And
I feel pretty good about
and a FIP of over 4.
Yeah, there you go. Some savant stuff for you. It's good and bad. The good is average exit velocity, barrel rate, hard hit rate, all in the top 25% of Major League Baseball pitchers this season. The bad for him, whiff rate, 22nd percentile, strikeout rate, 34th percentile, league average when it comes to walk rate, below average, expected batting average. And so you've got a guy, I compared him to Walker Buehler, where there's not a ton of swing and miss, and you're relying on soft contact. To me, a guy that's not going to get swing and miss is the type of pitcher that I love to see, Anthony, when it comes to the Dodgers. Because if there's not a huge threat for a ton of strikeouts from the other guy, it means guys like the Dodgers have, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Teoscar Hernandez, that have some strikeout numbers to them. But if you don't really have to worry about being down 0-2 because you don't necessarily feel like the guy has a ton of stuff that's going to get swing and miss, that's a recipe for what the Dodgers would love to see. I'll give you one more stat, Anthony. Luis Severino, his last 5 starts, has given up 3 or more earned runs in every single one of them going back to the regular season. He's allowed 6 home runs over that stretch. So throw all that in a bucket. It's the postseason. Severino, the name, he's been there, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just saying, whatever you feel about Walker Buehler, there's not a number 1 walking through the other door tomorrow night.
Yeah. You mean Ron Darling's not walking through that door?
I mean, it might be present day Ron Darling. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'll double check. I'll get research on it. You keep talking. I'll look that up.
You know, I think you make a really good point. As a point I was going to make first, and so I'll reiterate it, is that when you don't have a guy who is a dominant strikeout type of profile, it means the Dodgers can stay in at bats, and they are the best team in baseball. Like I know what the numbers say, and this is true too, but you can just watch the game with the eyeball test and you see if you have a pitcher who struggles to put guys away and who might be pushed to the edges of the zone because he's afraid that they're not going to miss pitches in the middle. Yeah. They eat on those guys. And that's not to say Severino can't be solid. He has been solid, and he's kept the Mets in some games. And he's kept them in some games of late. Like he's been fine. And the Mets are a good club. Like they're not here without being a decent club. They're just not as good, I don't think, as the Padres, the team they just faced. And when you have on the Padres some guys who are able to throw some swing and miss stuff, they have the capability to make this lineup look not as great as they actually are. Severino has not profiled out that way this season. Yeah. And if you allow the Dodgers to hang in at bats, they're good enough that eventually, and this is part of their philosophy, if they're going to try to hang around to get something that they can find the barrel with. And the more often this team is allowed to do that, that's when they have those big snowball innings where you look up and all of a sudden there's a 5 spot on the board in the 3rd inning. That's how that kind of stuff works for them. And I personally think that with both these pitchers, we're going to know early. Yeah. This season, Buehler has showed us early.
Buehler, I would say yes. Severino has actually, what's interesting is Severino has struggled the 2nd and 3rd time through the order. In those 5 where he's allowed 3 or more, only once has a team gotten to him in the first 2 innings.
Yeah. And I say that to say, I'll finish the sentiment here. I say that to say, if it looks like he's not easing his way through this lineup stress-free early, fair. It might be a quick hook. Yeah. Somebody was asking behind it.
Somebody was asking about Severino's pitch mix. This is the guy that's heavy four-seam fastball, 35% four-seamer, 25% sinker. So basically 60% of the time, you're getting something that's coming 95 to 96 miles an hour. Sweeper, 17%, and then he mixes in cutter, change, and slider, each at about 7 to 8%. So it is a 6-pitch mix technically, but 3/4 of the time, it's either four-seamer, sinker, or sweeper. Again, the four-seamer and sinker get up there 96 miles an hour. But it's, that's what you're going to see from Luis Severino. So if I'm not saying Severino stinks and and Walker Buehler's awesome. But
No,
I'm just saying, if I could give you a scenario where both of these starting pitchers were about the same, if starting pitching is a level playing field, you have to feel good, Anthony, as a Dodgers fan, because the
perfect way
bullpen,
to
you
put
feel
it.
better.
Yes.
Dodgers offense, you feel better if you're the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it, because we're not saying either of these guys is a frontline starter right now, but I like Walker Buehler versus the Mets lineup more than I like Luis Severino against the Dodgers lineup.
Yeah, fair. It's a great point. Let's get to some news and notes. Oh, excuse me. We do have a super chat here. Excuse me, Cordenas. Love the show. Love all the work you guys do. Thank you. We appreciate that. Live content coming at you every single night on this channel. I will be back with the post-game show tomorrow night. We've got a post-game show Thursday night, post-game show Friday night, an off-night show on Saturday night, and we'll see what happens from there. Hopefully we've got a World Series preview show happening on Saturday, but we'll see. And hopefully it involves the Dodgers, obviously. Otherwise, there would not be a World Series preview show on this channel. I can assure you of that. Let's get to some news and notes from the press conference today, Anthony. A bunch of guys spoke. I mentioned the Will Smith comment. Let's get to a couple of these. Shohei Ohtani, let's start with him. He's a small talking point, I would say, of Major League Baseball and of the postseason based on his inability to hit with guys not in scoring position. He was asked about his approach. He said his focus right now is on sticking to his approach regardless of the situation. Not a ton of meat on this one, but it sounds like there's not a loss of confidence in Ohtani. Dave Roberts kind of felt like there were, depending on who the pitcher was, there were a few guys that he looked a little more out of sorts against than others. Mania was one of them. But to me, as I read through this,
up there.
What's that?
He looked like me and you up there against Mania.
Totally. And Yu Darvish was another guy, and I believe Tanner Scott. Those were the three that Dave Roberts highlighted. But to me, if Ohtani, and he's been pretty honest, but if he says he hasn't lost confidence, I'm going to take my chances. Throw out, it's like throw out the box score, throw out the last 19 at-bats with Shohei Ohtani. I don't know about you. I'm going to feel great every single time he's at the dish, no matter when the last time he got a single was.
Yeah, I want him up all the time.
All the time.
I can't remember the last Dodger hitter, maybe Manny Ramirez in 2008, where I was just like steady studying the lineup to be like, okay, how much longer till this guy comes up? How much? And I've done that all year with Ohtani. I think the last player was probably like, what day is today? Like, oh, Kershaw pitches in 3 days. Okay. Like he was the last guy that I did that with is in terms of any player. But look, when he tends to break out a little bit, he breaks out. And it's not like there hasn't been signs of like really good things. Like, I mean, that ball that he hit, that line drive he hit off the wall that put a dent in the wall the other night. I mean, that ball disintegrated off the bat. Like, I mean, it was just absolutely smashed. And so I think it's just a matter of him when there's nobody on, like staying inside the zone and kind of staying within that box and not expanding or giving up hittable pitches. I think sometimes he's tended to do that a little bit also. And so, I think he's fine. And you know what? It would be great to see him hit something really hard that found some grass or found the seats in inning number one. Like, I think that would go a long way to calming all of us, but also like calming him. Like, I found this. Like, it's fine. I told you guys I was fine. Because I really think he believes that. And I don't have any reason to doubt that he should.
Yeah, and he's got 12 strikeouts and 27 at-bats this postseason. But again, he's facing a guy tomorrow who's in the bottom 25 to 30%. He's in the bottom 25% at swing and miss. And so with Ohtani's eye, I'm not worried about him getting caught looking necessarily. And if this guy's going to have a real hard time getting Ohtani to swing and miss, that's good news there. Some other notes.
And I'll also say this quickly. Like, while Severino is a fine pitcher and he's capable of getting these guys out, I don't think he's got the stuff to get Ohtani out where Ohtani is weakest.
Yeah.
And
good point.
If you don't have that, then you have to challenge. And when you have challenge him, you have to challenge inside. And if you miss even a little bit, he has proven all summer long that he will pound you.
Yeah. So, and again, Ohtani's speed will come into play if the ball is in fact put into play more often than it has been. And that strikeout rate of almost 50%, it feels like, coming up. Some other health updates, some good ones here. Gavin Lux feeling, quote, much better, expected to be in the lineup in game 3. Daniel Hudson available for game 3 as well. Dave Roberts on Freddie Freeman also said he doesn't see a world where Freddie Freeman isn't starting one of these NLCS games. Basically, Freddie's in the lineup every single night. He'll figure it out health-wise and pain-wise. So Lux expected back, which is good news. Hudson available, whatever was going on there. And Freddie Freeman expected to be in the lineup, barring something crazy happening. All 3 of those positive updates. Things that he expected, Anthony. But look, as Dodger fans, we've been hurt in a way where we don't assume the expected things are actually going to happen.
There's a lot of trauma here.
Yes, it's true. It's true. The one other update that Dave gave was that Jack Flaherty, he was asked, will Flaherty pitch game 5? Again, they've got Buehler for 3, Yamamoto for 4. Presumably, it would be Flaherty for 5, bullpen game for 6, and then Buehler again for game 7. Dave said Flaherty in game 5 depends on how the next couple of games go. So
yeah, I agree. It's fair.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just like, if the Dodgers win the next 2 and go up 3-1, is that a world where, like, I'm trying to think, what's the scenario where he doesn't pitch in game 5?
I think that's the scenario.
Because then you just try and get a bullpen game and see if you can get out of it to, like, what, save him for the next round?
I think so. I think that's the idea. And then if you lose that game, then you have him on extra rest to say, you know what, let's shut this thing down now.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I already know. I mean, let's hope we get there. Let's hope we're arguing about what the Dodgers should be do up 3-1. But if we're having a conversation about, well, they're setting this up in case they make the World Series, I already know how that's going to play in some circles, and I get it. It's logically, it makes sense. And to your point, if they lose with a bullpen game in game 5, and then you say, oh, hey, well, good news, Flaherty in 6 and Buehler in 7, and this is after they have one Walker Buehler start tomorrow, then you're saying the same things. Hey, they lost, but set up for success here. We'll see. We'll see. Flaherty, again, could pitch game 5 on totally normal rest. Buehler could pitch game 7 on totally normal rest. And then they would just need one more bullpen game, which, look, we know how that went. So remains to be seen whether or not they can find any success from that as well. All right, let's get to some questions, folks. If you've got any all caps questions, throw those in the chat. We appreciate almost 1,300 people in here on an off night. Thank you. I see Matty Man. Someone was asking about the lineup. Dave has indicated they're not changing the lineup up at all. Again, Gavin Lux will be in there tomorrow, and that's the only expected change that we have. So Peyton asking, is Kershaw pitching this series? Kershaw's done for the year, so he will not be pitching in this series, but he will be a Dodger in 2025, which is great news. Big asks, are we concerned with Sevy? We had an extended discourse here, and I think, Anthony, it's fair to say we don't think he sucks, but we're not concerned.
Cautiously optimistic against him.
Cautious. I don't even know if I'm cautious. I would say I'm optimistic. Anthony's cautiously optimistic. I'm optimistic based on the matchup, based on a guy who doesn't get swing and miss and who's heavy on the velocity in the 95, 96 range. That's how I'm feeling. Angelo wants to know, any chance Ohtani will pitch if they get to the World Series? 0% chance? 1% chance?
What's less than 0?
I'm not a math guy. Let me Google that.
Angelo, I think that it's just a no-go. They're not going to risk it. They have too much invested in him, and they have too much invested in him next season in terms of his role on both sides of the ball. So I don't think so. And in all honesty, the way things are going now, he would only be a bullpen arm anyway. He wouldn't be a starter, right? He wouldn't be in the rotation. I think as of right now, they have the bullpen covered. I think it's fine. It's good enough to the point where, like, I don't think they're going to be like, Ohtani's not the missing piece. And if he is, then something has gone terribly wrong. And I don't even know if they're in the World Series. Yeah, fair enough. Some other questions here. Eric wants to know, how will they attack Severino? Work the pitch count or try to ambush him? I would imagine the approach is work the pitch count because of how much the bullpen for the Mets has struggled, because you've got 3 games in 3 days, and because you're not necessarily totally worried about the swing and miss stuff. That would be one of the reasons you try and ambush, because it's like, well, crap, if Darvish has me with 2 strikes and I have no idea what pitch is coming next, ... Whereas with Severino, I would think you work the pitch count. What do you think? Okay, so I think it's a little more nuanced than that. When they tend to look sluggish offensively, they let a lot of hittable pitches go. And some of that is them trying to be patient and trying to work a guy. It also tends to happen when there's a guy on the mound who has swing and miss stuff. I think with Severino, a guy who doesn't really have swing and miss stuff, at least, he's not trended that way. They keyhole parts of the strike zone. And if he throws a pitch in that area, they let it fly. And whether that be pitch 1 or pitch 4, that's what they do. And that's not always the case when they are up against a swing or miss guy, at least not on the first pitch or two. Yeah. So with this one, I think that's part of the strategy. But also, if it's not in that keyhole zone, they're going to be very patient because, again, they're not afraid to get behind in the count against this guy, and they believe that they could put bat to ball. So I think it's a nuanced answer to this, and I don't think it's a cop out to say it's a little bit of both, but that's because they aren't always trying to ambush other guys that might be a little more potent with like the strikeout kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's fair. So good question. Good answer there from you, Anthony. I appreciate that. TQT. Will Smith isn't going to be benched thanks to Austin Barnes, but why not drop him in the lineup? Muncy, Kike, Lux, and maybe Edmund should all hit above Smith right now.
That was something we said yesterday that I would definitely be willing to have that conversation about dropping him in the lineup, just not taking him out of it. And I think that's fair depending on matchup. If the lineup comes out tomorrow and he's hitting 7th, I'm not losing, I'm not heartbroken over that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think totally, I have no issue with it. Like if Dave Roberts decided, and I don't know if this is sort of a try and keep your guy positive that you're not dropping him in the lineup. Will Smith doesn't seem like the guy that would really matter to him. Kike came up in 2 of the biggest spots yesterday and was a mess in both of them. So Lux has been an up and down. Muncy's been good in spots and bad in spots. Edmund had 3 hits yesterday. At least one of them probably could have been ruled an error. So I think you could make arguments. Will Smith has been worse than all of these guys this postseason. That's why I'm like, sure, that's fine with me.
Results wise, but I think he's hanging around where he's at in the order, at least in the front office's mind, because there's just enough hard hit every now and then, I think, to give them like, we think he'll be okay. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that might be part of the reason why he hasn't been dropped yet. But like I said, I'd be fine if they did.
Yeah, I'm with you. Jonathan wants to know, speaking of Smith, what would be considered a bounce back year for Will Smith? He says 250, 350, 450 in his opinion. This year he was 250, 330, 430 was where he ended the season. Obviously those numbers are well down. He was still above average offensively. Obviously, depending on what stretch of time you looked at, it wasn't great. Last year was 260, 360, 440. So right about what Jonathan is describing here. But I mean, if you wanted to go off on a limb, his weighted runs created plus has decreased now 5 consecutive seasons, Anthony. How about that? That's some twisting of some numbers. 2020 way up there, but 2021, 130, then 127, 118, 111 this year.
Yeah. Last 2 years, not elite for his position. The 2 years before that, 3 years before that, super elite for his position. I think you need a nice bounce back year there because I think the slash line doesn't tell the whole story. So I think like a weighted runs created plus in the mid 120s is like, okay, now looks like we got something here. And then you hope that it progresses, the following season. But I think a nice bounce back year would be something in that area.
Yeah. For what it's worth, he had the 3rd highest weighted runs created plus of any catcher just last season. Obviously, that number wasn't as high as it had been for him, but 118 ranked only behind Adley Rutschman and William Contreras last season. So that's the hard part. I'm with you. I look at the number, not like, oh, well, all the other catchers sucked, so we should feel better about it. I hope for a higher number for Will Smith, I think is the simplest way to put it. Cole, do you think Smith's struggles at the plate are a result of his improved stats behind the dish? Is he spending more time on defense than hitting? Will Smith was nominated for a Gold Glove this year, so his defense is much improved. Do you think there's anything to kind of the spending more time thinking more, focusing more on defense than hitting?
It's a good question. I think it's worthy of some exploring. And I hate to say I don't know. Typically, typically no, but he has clearly made a concerted effort to be better defensively because that was the one spot where he was being dinged, and he has gotten better. Pitch calling and game calling, still leaves a little something to be desired, but is it taking so much focus away that he's struggled, that he's taken this much of a dip offensively? I don't think so. I think it's something else.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that it can't be somewhat of a factor.
Yeah, and look, if we believe that the wear and tear of a catcher catches up with a guy, no pun intended, as a season goes on, who's to say that now 4 consecutive seasons for Will Smith isn't compounding, right? In that, yes, he's losing steam as each individual season goes on and we get into August, September, October. But I mean, keep in mind, this is a guy who's been insanely durable for the Dodgers. 130, 137, 126, 128 games played. And I know that's not 162, but that's at catcher. I mean, this year he played 128 with 0 games as a DH, basically. And so, is it possible that he's just being physically worn down by all that?
Yeah,
it's possible.
It's very possible. It is very possible. And you wonder how long it takes before he gets moved out of there, like on a full-time basis. Freddie's got 3 more seasons or something like, right? Like,
they got nowhere to put Will Smith.
They got nowhere to put him. Like, he's not going to play third. Max is also signed. Obviously, he's not going to DH. Now if they want to make whoever it may be next year the personal catcher for Shohei, then maybe he gets,
You don't think Shohei maybe not getting a couple innings out in the outfield from time to time?
Could be. I don't see that. I don't see that at this point. But so that may be 25-ish days or so that Will Smith gets to hit in the lineup and not have to catch. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's been a bad season. He's not been very good. I think it's more than just him focusing on his defense, though. I think, and hopefully it's correctable.
Kevin wants to know, is this team too injured to win the NLCS and World Series? Easy no for me.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
They're still the best team. I would say they're the best team alive, despite the injury.
I agree. And I would be the first one to say I was wrong, because I said, like, the week going into the end of the season, my confidence had dipped a lot because of the starting pitching injuries. It really had. And then to see kind of what they were able to put together against the Padres made me very optimistic. To see Flaherty in game 1 of this series made me very optimistic. And what we've seen from Walker Buehler has been very good. And then, one of my favorite players on this roster, Yamamoto, I mean, that was a nail start that he had after a bad one. And so I love his bounce back ability. I'm in now on this starting pitching being enough. I'm in on the bullpen being good again, because they are. And I think they definitely have enough to win it all.
Few more here. Beaches wants to know, who will be the NLCS MVP? Let's assume the Dodgers end up winning this. Who do you have as the NLCS MVP? Jack Flaherty?
Oh, man.
You throw up another start like he put on, and guys don't necessarily come. Nobody lights it up on fire. I know pitchers tend to not necessarily win these awards, but if he gives you 2 starts and it ends up being like 14 innings with 1 earned run or something like that,
right? Yeah, then he wins it. There's no question. I kind of don't care who does what offensively. He probably wins it. I'm going to say, I don't like to pick this guy for this kind of stuff, but I feel like this might be it. I think Shohei finds it, and I think he finds it starting tomorrow, and he gets very hot in this series.
I like it. Joel wants to know, can the Dodgers play in cold weather? Walker Buehler says he ain't afraid of the cold, baby. Ice in their veins, Anthony.
How cold is it going to be?
I don't know. I was just going to ask you that. You were like sort of my East Coast guy.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't lived there in a long time, but
today high of 59. I mean, that ain't cold.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Tomorrow, I mean, tomorrow is going to be sunny with a high of 57.
Yeah. I mean, and they have guys who have played in cold weather on that roster. Like, I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, I guess it'll be 8 p.m., so it'll probably be upper 40s.
Yeah, but it's not like the Mets play exclusively in the winter, and then now the Dodgers have to go there in cooler weather. Like, they play in the summer there too. It's not cold in New York during the summer. So
yeah, I like it. Turtleneck game. Yeah, Honeywell's gonna be outfitting everybody. Either here or there. Do players prefer playing in high pressure games like ones with the Padres or more chill games like ones with the Mets? I would push back that these are chill. It's the NLCS, but I understand the sentiment of maybe the way I would put it, Anthony, is do you think players prefer games where there is emotional baggage on the line, or games where the stakes are high, if not higher, but there's not necessarily an animosity and sort of a tension that exists in between the lines?
I think they see it just like us. They feel it just like us. Like, they're all high intensity, but like losing a game against the Padres hits different than losing a game against the Mets, right? Or losing a series against them would. So, they like to win more in those situations.
Yeah.
They like to, they don't like to lose, but they like to lose more in the opposite situation, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a classic cop-out answer. Depends on the guy. Like, I think a guy like Walker Buehler probably loves the high pressure. I think Yamamoto showed us something in Game 5 about where he's at with all this. Obviously, Kike Hernandez and his reputation. So I think some guys are built for it and some guys aren't. And, that's just the way that it is. So let's see. We'll get to a couple more questions. If you've got any fun questions, we can mix it up. Mercy's asked this a few times. Do you think the Dodgers will offer Chris Taylor another contract once his is over? Do you think he'll end up on a different team? At first I read this and said, do you think Chris Taylor makes it to the end of his Dodgers contract? But that's not what it says. So I think Chris Taylor will retire as a Dodger when his contract ends, would be my prediction, Anthony.
Yeah, they're not bringing him back. The only way he stays in uniform is if for some reason they want him on the bench for something as a coach.
Risen indeed. We are underestimating the Mets. Look at the Phillies.
I don't think anyone's underestimating the Mets. We're selling, like I'm saying, like this is still a good club. Like, they're not a good club. I'm just saying they're not as good as the Padres were. Yep. But they're a good club. Like, I think I would not be surprised if the Dodgers lose this game. I'm just saying I'm confident that they're going to play well, and I think that they have a matchup that's a little bit more favorable than the other side. This is a good club. Now, we've seen, even in that game yesterday, though, where they are vulnerable. Their defense isn't very good. Like, to say the Dodgers are a better defensive team in any series this postseason it's going to take a lot of work by the other team to be worse. And so, there's that. I think the bullpen is not quite as good as San Diego's, or it's not as good as LA's. So I think there are more advantages in this series against this team for the Dodgers than there were in the NLDS. Not to say that the Mets can't win, and not to say that the Mets aren't good, because the Phillies are a good club and they beat them.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think you said it perfectly. It's not that we're quote unquote underestimating the Mets. It's just saying out loud that the Padres are better than the Mets. I think the Dodgers are more talented than the Mets. And so there's reasons for confidence. It's not to say
it's a better
anything's guaranteed.
It's a better matchup in the NLCS for the Dodgers than it was in the NLDS. Doesn't mean that the Mets can't win a game or two or three going forward.
I'm with you. Okay, I've got a couple food questions for you. We got one from Dong. He wants to know if you found a ramen spot you like.
Oh, yes. So thank you all who gave me the recommendations. I wrote them down in my notes, and I went to a couple places, and I forget the name of the one I really liked. I'll put it on social. That's a good question, Dong. I'm sorry I don't have the answer right at hand. I'll look it up, because I put a star by it, and it was a recommendation from one of the people in the chat. So I'll have to find that and give it to you on Twitter.
Okay, I got some food questions that come from a text message thread I'm in with a couple of the other Dodger Blue guys.
And Dong, if you have a recommendation for me, shoot it.
Okay. The first one, this is called the Chase the Ring Dog. You tell me if you're in or out on this hot dog from Dodgers. Okay. Bacon wrapped Brooklyn dog topped with burnt end, chopped red peppers, onion rings, and finished with barbecue aioli. In or out?
Let's read that again. Bacon wrapped.
Bacon wrapped dog, topped with burnt ends, chopped red peppers, onion rings, and finished with a barbecue aioli.
I'm not a big onion rings guy, so I can hold those, but it actually sounds pretty solid.
I said I didn't know if I would trust the Dodgers to not screw up burnt ends. However, I was told the burnt ends at Dodger Stadium aren't bad, so I'm kind of in. My thing is, like, how badly can you screw up a bacon wrapped hot dog? You pretty much can't screw that up.
It's tough.
It's tough.
And Hawaiian Kira makes a good point that aioli has mayo in it, and I appreciate you looking out there. It does. I'm not slathering anything in aioli. I'll say that for sure.
Okay, this comes from I won't tell the chat. You can all guess who sent this one to the chat that I'm in. With the tagline, "Finally they made good sushi," and it's s'mores sushi. Quarter cup butter, 10 ounces of mini marshmallows, 5 cups of Rice Krispie cereal, 2 cups of marshmallow fluff, and then some chocolate syrup, it looks like, thrown all over this thing with, I think it's rice.
Is there and there's fish in it?
No fish.
Oh.
No, there's no. Yeah, it's a California roll, basically. It's rice with some marshmallows, marshmallow fluff, maybe some chocolate and graham cracker, and then Rice Krispies on top.
Yeah, I mean,
I couldn't be more out, Anthony. This is vile.
The chat has it right in terms of their guesses, I think. I don't know who said this, but
yes, 100% it was Blake, by the way.
For sure.
100% Blake. Hawaiian Kier said OMG s'mores, and I'm just really, really hoping that wasn't I'm interested.
I don't get the rice. Why not just have a s'more?
Yeah, it's stupid. This is one of my hottest takes. I think s'mores stink in general. I think s'mores are maybe the most overrated food. People like making s'mores infinitely, and then they forget how mediocre the actual s'more is. Because they're like, I'm sitting around a campfire. It's nice. I get to roast the marshmallow. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I'm probably with people I like. And then they eat it, and then they've already forgotten how mediocre it is. So that's my take. There's a hot food take for you. I have one more. This was sent. Nat Moreno sent this. No comment. So there was no positive or negative. Apparently, McDonald's in Canada. So this isn't for the Mets series. But McDonald's in Canada has breakfast snack wraps. So it's a tortilla with hash brown, and then one has chicken in it. That one seems weird. What? One has sausage, bacon, and egg, and the other has spicy egg and hash brown. Maybe these all don't have, they all look like they have hash browns in it. But how do you feel about a McDonald's breakfast snack wrap? Apparently they're allergic to calling these breakfast burritos.
There has to be a Mexican spot around all of these McDonald's that are serving these. Like
this
somewhere
is in Canada. In Canada, maybe not.
Hey man, we're in Canada. We're in Canada too. There's got to be,
I'm just saying it's less likely.
I'm out.
I got McDonald's 10-1 to good Mexican restaurants at minimum in Canada is all I'm saying.
Okay, fair. I am full on out on that.
Yeah. See, I'm in. That just sounds like a breakfast burrito to me. Like hash browns, bacon, egg, sausage. What's wrong with that?
Okay, let's say, maybe not a Mexican place, but there has to be some other place within walking distance of all of those McDonald's serving that in Canada that has a much better breakfast burrito than what they're giving you there.
I think you are way overestimating the quality of Mexican food that you're going to find in
I said it doesn't have to be a Mexican spot. Like country kitchens have breakfast burritos.
I mean, maybe one of us is very wrong about the culinary situation up in Canada right now, and I'm not sure who.
I'm not a Canadian, but I feel like if there were enough Canadians in this chat, they'd be coming at your neck.
Where's our guy, Jason? Jason is our resident Canadian, and he's probably going to comment on this afterwards. But I want to know, Jason, which one of us is way out on this? Okay. I feel, we had one more here. We had a good one from Hawaiian Kier wants to know, are you a sour gummies or a regular gummies person?
Oh, man. One of my favorite candies, I don't eat a lot of candy, but one of my favorite candies are gummy bears and gummy worms of the regular variety. I like sour also, but like kind of like if I'm at the airport and I'm grabbing something for the plane or something, it's gummy bears usually.
Okay. Just regular. I'm sour. Everything. Gummies, sour gummies. I would take sour gummies over chocolate every single day of the week.
Oh, yeah. If those are my options, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying.
Mr. Kirk, this is a great question. What's the strangest pizza topping that you like?
Mm,
I'm trying to think of like Mod Pizza or one of those type of
yeah.
places. Like, what's the weirdest thing I throw on top? I'll do one of my food takes that makes people the most mad is I hate all olives. So that's pretty much the only thing that's on like a normal option that I won't put onto. Okay, I actually have an answer to this one. So
Okay.
great. Do you have Mod Pizza where you're at? I
Yeah.
can't remember what's a chain.
Yes.
Okay, so like one of these make your own pizza deals,
Yeah.
right? Like a Chipotle for pizzas. There's one in the airport in Portland, and it's the only one that does this because it opens so much earlier than every other Mod Pizza. They will put egg on your pizza. So you make the pizza, they take like raw egg, like scrambled eggs mix basically, and they just drizzle it all over the pizza, throw that bad boy in the oven, and the egg cooks. Oh my goodness, it is fantastic. So I'm going egg. How's that for a strange pizza topping?
Yeah, that's strange. I've never heard of that actually. So that's
Breakfast
cool.
pizza, man. Delicious.
Okay. Okay. I don't think this is that strange because I think a lot of, maybe not a lot, but places have it. I don't think it's unheard of for everybody, but like spaghetti on pizza is pretty good.
What?
You never heard of this?
No. Why would
It's
you do that? I mean, it sounds fine.
yeah,
I'm good
it's
with
fine.
like adding carbs to anything. I just don't understand like what the need would be.
Because it's a different topping, I guess. Like I'm not saying like it's what I order every time I order a pizza. It's like I've had it like 3 times in my entire life.
Okay.
And I don't think I've ever ordered it, but there are places that will put spaghetti on pizza. And if we're looking for strangest pizza
Strange.
toppings,
Yeah.
that's about all I get because I don't get too wild with like pizzas. Like I guess like if people get pissed off that people put pineapple on pizza, then you can be mad at me because I think pineapple's good. Pineapple, like crushed pineapple in tacos with hot sauce, like hot chili. Ooh, boy, that's
Okay.
like that's solid. But like talking about pizza, like yeah, I don't think I get too like wild with those toppings. Like
I like Cole. Cole says, Jeff, that's not pizza you're eating. That's called quiche. I'm just telling you, it's a pizza crust. Okay. And it's mostly cheese with a little bit of egg on there. But fair. It's a great comment. On that note, we're going to close it out. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on a Tuesday night. We greatly appreciate it. Glad we got to have a little food fun. Pumpkin brittle? Good Lord. I hope you didn't put anything pumpkin related on a pizza. That is disrespectful. Pumpkin brittle. Golly. Yikes. Yikes. Okay. Well, we were going to go out on a good note. Now, now we got that. Alex says he likes pizza on his spaghetti. So there you go. I guess
yeah.
one of
I
those.
stand corrected. Yeah.
There you go.
Sounds
There you
better.
go. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Be back here tomorrow night, post game, after the Dodgers win game to 3, and Walker Buehler throws. What did we decide on? 6 innings, 2 earned, I believe was kind of where we landed.
I like it.
Severino, 4 innings, 3 earned. It's my prediction. Dodgers gonna win. I keep saying 7-2, so we're gonna stick with it. 7-2 Dodgers, right, Anthony. One of these times I'll be right.
There we go. That's the old Doyle hand to win the World Series of Poker.
There you go. There you go. You got a prediction?
Yeah, I said already Walker 6-2. And I think they win comfortably. I will say 6. You said 7-2?
I said 7-2.
Okay, I won't take that then. I'll say 6-1.
Okay. And you got me and Daniel tomorrow night. So the OG DodgerHead OGs taking over the channel tomorrow night. So we remember Daniel and I were here for the whole 2020 run. So maybe we just need a little good luck combo, some little 2020 magic to sprinkle in. Thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate you. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Enjoy the rest of your night. As always, go Dodgers.